Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning and welcome to the third lecture in the online series Introduction to Interaction Design. I am your course instructor Dr. Sonal Atre, Assistant Professor in the Department of Design at IIT Roorkee. So, in the last lecture we saw how design encompasses the area of interaction design, where interaction design fits into the whole scheme of the design domain. We also saw that how the use of certain principles like words, visual representations, space, time and behavior help designers create better interactions. So, today we will see the process of design in terms of how design interaction for problem solving can be done to generate more ideas and solutions to create better interactive systems. There are several domains that utilize design as a process. For example, architectural design, behavioral sciences, industrial design, product design. So, there are some similarities in all of these areas in terms of how they carry out the research process or how the design process is conducted. So, we will discuss the double diamond process. So, there are 4 phases in the design process and the other domains of design like architecture design, industrial design, product design and many others, they follow a similar approach, although it may vary slightly depending on the problem and what is the solution we are trying to look at. So, these broad phases are discover, define, develop and deliver. So, the double diamond products such as Apple and Microsoft, they use the double diamond process to problem solving. So, we can broadly break this process into 2 parts. One is the problem space and the other is the solution phase. So, the diamond on the left which has discover and define on top, that is the problem space, and on the right the develop and deliver is the solution space. So, as we can see that the one individual diamond is starting from a point and then it is diverging. So, the first stage or the first step here is the divergence. But before we actually start working on this method, we start applying it, there are a few preparations that usually should be made. So, what 2 things are important when we are planning to apply the double diamond is the team that is going to work on the project and the second is the space. So, since this is a highly collaborative activity, so the team has to be chosen in a very careful manner that all the members, they are able to contribute to all the phases that will be involved in this process. So, for example, one stage would require to interview people to get their feedback. So, does the person in the team, does he or she have those skills to actually talk with people without hurting their sentiments? So, just an example that how we need different strengths in the team. The other important requirement is that of space, because this is not an activity that will be covered in a single day. It will be a long process, it will go on for a long time. So, a space is required wherein people can come back and continue with the process, and this is since a very hands on exercise. So, generally the walls are utilized for this purpose, for putting the ideas, so the whole team can monitor the progress of the entire team. So, in the first step, which is the discover, so we can see that how the triangle is opening up, that means we are now diverging into the area. So, here we explore the problems, and the main purpose is to find the root cause. So, that is something that we will be able to find and define at the end of this phase. So, there are certain methods that are used. I will mention just a few. So, one is mind maps. So, just like a map has several nodes, there are connections. So, what are those connections between, for example, a problem with the product? What kind of problems can we map? Then we have multi-perspective problem framing. So, wherein like as a lot of different people have different perspectives for a certain service or a product. So, in a similar manner, what are the different perspectives around this particular problem area? Then brainstorming, where a lot of ideas are discussed amongst the team members, so that we are able to come up with some good ideas at the end of the exercise. Desk research, wherein a secondary research is conducted, and also field research, which consists of activities like interviews, focus groups, and observations. So, these three are very important 3 steps, especially the field research, because this tells the designer that what are the problems or challenges that are being faced by the user. So, interviews can be also broken down into 3 different types. So, structured, semi-structured, and open-ended. So, here the degree of freedom basically is what is different. So, in structured interviews, the researcher has a set of questions and he or she does not deviate from those set of questions. In semi-structured, some of the answers may lead to some other questions, further interrogation, and in open-ended questions there is more flexibility and they are more organic in nature. So, once the discovery stage is over, then we will be having a lot of data for us to analyze and then define the problem further. So, then we move on to the next stage, but we are still in the first phase of problem identification stage itself. So, now we are converging to take up all the data that we have collected to define the problem and put it in a problem statement in that way, so that we are able to see the problem statement. So, we are able to then go to the next step and find solutions. So, here also we use several methods like root cause analysis, the method of 5 whys, wherein we keep on asking why until we come to the root cause of the problem. Then user story, that how the narrative is important for this stage, and also the affinity diagrams. So, these are several techniques that are used. Now, when we come to the next stage, and again here we will be diverging, this is the develop stage. So, now we have some we have a problem statement, and now we have to develop some solutions, some prototypes. So, there are several ways in which we can go ahead in this as well. So, one is the minimum viable product or MVP. So, this is a quick technique to just how can by minimal investment we can come up with a solution. So, we can test it out. Rapid prototyping, so we can quickly make some prototypes. They may be paper prototypes, they may be cardboard prototypes. something that can be quickly made so that we can analyze them further. Storytelling and consumer journey mapping, wherein we map the steps that the consumer takes. For example, while purchasing something on an online platform, what are the challenges or hurdles the user is facing? So, we map those journeys of the user to find those challenging areas that can be worked upon, or we can find solutions. So, once the prototypes are designed, then of course we are testing them as well, and in the initial stage they may be low fidelity prototypes, and later on of course the high fidelity prototypes will be developed, and finally in the deliver stage where again we are converging. So, here once the delivery of the final solution has been made, of course we will follow it up, we will take the feedback of the user, we will conduct surveys, and also another method of shadowing where we follow the user like a shadow, and we see that, again observe that what are the areas where the user is probably coming across some discomfort or some problem in accessing or using the solution, so that it can be maybe again modified if required. Now, the next is the design thinking process. So, before we go into the design thinking process, we should first understand that what is the ideology behind design thinking. So, design thinking is a methodology that aims to tackle highly complex problems. So, in our daily life we come across many different types of problems. So, some can be small problems which can be easily tackled, and there could be some bigger problems. So, small problems that are also called tame problems, and difficult ones known as the wicked problems. So, let us take an example of a tame problem for from our daily life and see that what is the difference between these two. So, for example, I am being visited by a friend of mine and I am preparing tea. So, I have prepared the tea for both of us, and then suddenly the bell rings and another friend joins. So, in that case probably what I will do is either I will make another cup of tea, or maybe I will divide whatever I have prepared into 3 different cups. Although the quantity will be less, but still we all 3 will be able to enjoy the cup of tea. So, this is a small problem where a simple logic can be utilized and we can come to a solution. Now, there are some other problems which are much larger in nature, much complex, and we cannot use such simple logic to solve these problems. So, for example, world peace, world hunger. So, these are very big problems that cannot be solved simply. Now, there are businesses as well which have within their system such kind of wicked problems. So, there may be a problem in understanding the user better, there may be a problem in satisfying the consumer or coming up with a good business plan. So, these are also some very tough, complex and wicked problems. So, here in this kind of a problem where a simple logical approach cannot be undertaken, so here design thinking technique helps. So, here we can see the first step is empathy. Now, empathy is one of the most important steps because this allows us to see, observe and talk with the user and identify their pain points. So, what are the challenges, problems and difficulties that the users are facing, because our ultimate goal is to deliver to them a very good and positive experience. So, what are those challenges that they are facing in receiving a positive experience? Now, since design thinking is an out of the box approach, so some steps may not be very linear. This may at certain times one may have to go back and forth to actually come up with the final solution. So, once we have empathized with the users, so now we will come to know that what are the various areas, what are the problems, so we can put them in different baskets, that how do we, in order to tackle them further. And now once we have got all these problems, we will now create a problem statement. So, how can we categorize all of that information to come up with one single problem statement? Now, for example, there is a food delivery system, food delivery company. Now, one way they can put up a problem statement is that let us increase the delivery charges by 50%. So, that is one way of putting it up, and the other way of putting up the similar statement but empathizing with the users could be that how can we deliver to people or customers living beyond 5-kilometer radius. So, this is also going to do the same purpose, which is giving them more revenue or more benefit, but this is a way to define the problem so that we are also empathizing with some customers who are not able to take benefit from our service. So, we are also going to expand our business, right. Now, the next step here is to ideate. So, here we generate ideas and there is no restriction in this particular stage. The whole team is free to come up with interesting ideas, out of the box ideas that may or may not be implemented. So, but this stage requires the team to come up with multiple ideas so that we can then be able to choose the best out of these. So, once we have selected a few good ideas from the whole basket, then we go to the prototype stage. So, in this prototype stage, this is a scaled down version of what the final prototype or final model will look like. And this is a simple model, it can be a paper model or it can be a interactive digital representation, but using fewer resources. And finally, in the test stage, we will check for any flaws or any problems or any gaps that have still been left and they have been unaddressed. And finally, then we implement the solution. So, another method that we use is the lean startup process. So, this lean startup process usually has three steps. The first is build, second is measure, and third is learn. So, build, measure and learn, this is the loop that is used to come up with the solution. Now, within build we have products. So, building products, then measuring data and then applying learning from the data that we have received, and finally adding more ideas to again build. Now, this method is generally used by startups and also by established companies who want to bifurcate into a new area. So, what is interesting in this process is that it is not a long 5-year business model type of a problem. So, here what is advisable is that experiment and fail. So, that is the philosophy here. There is no fear of failure when we are using. So, now for this we also take up those ideas where the users have already demonstrated an interest, like where they would like to use or some kind of problems that they have addressed, and they are looking for a solution for that, rather than building a solution or a product first and then looking for the consumer for it. So, that is the lean startup process. So, for example, there is a fitness application. So, what this fitness application will probably first do is just create a very simple model of their application with registration and just a few different headings for the users to choose. Once they see the pattern of the users, that how they are interacting with this particular model, how many times are they coming back, are they using certain feature much more than the others. So, that will then tell them that what is that the user is looking for, and then they can slowly keep on adding more features to make the app more detailed, and so that there is more usership. This also helps businesses to recover quickly. So, if a business, for example, has put in a lot of effort in planning out a whole 5-year business model and then it fails, so that is, a big setback for the company. But here, because we are doing quick hypothesis checks, we are taking small hypotheses, testing them out. If they are passing, then we are moving forward. If they are failing, then probably we will diverge into some other direction. So, this is not such a big failure as an established or a traditional business, and actually failure is expected here in this particular process. The other important aspect here is of the team, that who comprises of the team. So, unlike traditional businesses where people are looking for certain experience, certain qualifications. So, here the team that is required has to have an open mind, they should be open to experimentation, and they should be open to rework on their previously done work, because we can see here that build, measure and learn. So, we will continuously keep on applying this to refine our final work. Another process that is used here is the agile process. So, as the name suggests, agile meaning flexible. So, this system or process offers flexibility to the design team, and here the problems are broken into smaller problems. So, we can see here that the one loop of one stage of the problem is design, then develop, then test, deploy and review. So, this is the step taken for solving one problem, and this one problem we can also call it as sprint, because it is done very quickly. The time required to finish one problem and go to the next step is usually 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the quantum of the problem and the challenges. So, after one sprint we go to the next, and during the whole process all the stakeholders are in the loop and they are getting the regular feedback as well. So, if there are any inputs, they can be incorporated and then we can quickly move forward to the next step. Now, the agile process and design thinking, the difference between these two approaches is that agile process is for problem solving and design thinking is for problem identification. So, if design thinking and agile process are combined, then they are going to be very effective in problem identification and for giving the solution to the problem. So, this becomes a combination of these two becomes a very strong approach for problem solving. Another method which was quite popular, it still is, which is the 6 Sigma process. So, this initially came about in 1980s, where the focus was for quality control. Now, this process has 2 offshoots. So, you can see DMAIC and DMADV, which is define, measure, analyze. These first three steps are same. The difference is in the last two steps, and the first one, the one with improve and control, DMAIC, is applied on companies or products that are already existing, and DMADV with the last two stages being design and validate, they are for new products that are planned or are envisioned. Now, here the problem is defined, the budget and all other considerations are taken into account. Then of course, we measure with the feedback received, we analyze it, we improve the system in the first area, in the existing, where there is an existing problem, we improve it, and then we put some control measures, so that there is a constant improvement. It should not, the performance should not go down. In the second approach, which is for newer products or processes, so here we again define, measure, analyze, and we here then design or make the prototype and then validate it or test it out to see if it is working as expected or there are some challenges. So, here we can see the broad differences between the two approaches, where DMAIC is initiated from any existing problem and DMADV is initiated from an innovation or an idea. Existing processes employ DMAIC, whereas new processes use DMADV. So, you can see that how the differences are also in the size of the team, because in the DMAIC we are going to improve and control, but the product or the service is already operational. So, we need a smaller team, but in DMADV, since it is a new product or a service and a lot of brains would be required for the processes of define, measure, analyze, design and verify or validate. So, a larger team is expected. Similarly, the time frame also is longer for DMADV problem, because we are starting from the point 0 here, whereas in DMAIC we already have reached a certain point and we are taking off from there. So, you can see that how these two approaches are different. Another approach that we use is the human centered design process. So, as the name suggests, human is in the center of the process. So, the process needs to take into account the human requirements. So, human centered design is basically an approach to interactive systems development to make them usable and useful by focusing on the users, their needs and requirements, and we apply strategies such as human factors, engineering and usability knowledge and techniques. So, this process is cyclical. So, what it means is it is not linear, and sometimes when we are in that stage of the design process, we realize that what are the lacuna or what are the gaps, and then we may want to visit the previous step again and make the required changes or conduct more research. Maybe in the research stage there were some gaps are still remaining. So, we may want to go back and study them, understand them better, and then come back to our next stage of prototype, for example. So, this is what makes it a fluid and continuous process, and when all the participants are satisfied and the solution has been identified, then it is when the process of this ends. And as we go along, further and practice more, so these cycles keep on becoming shorter and shorter. So initially the cycle may require a designer or the team to go back and forth, but over time and with experience these cycles become much more smaller and less time consuming. Now the human centered design process is also explored by IDEO. So IDEO is a very well known company in the business in the area of design, and we can see here that how they are approaching this process. So we can see that they are diverging first in the inspiration phase, and the problem is identified, it is framed and it is explored. So what is done is that people who are going to be impacted by this product or service, they have been talked with and they have been identified first, talked with, their needs have been documented, and once we have enough information and data, this step will organically take us to the next stage, which is our ideation stage. Now in ideation stage we can see that there is test and learn. There are two things here. So this again is like a cyclical process we discussed in the human centered design in the previous slide, that how one can go back and forth between the steps. So here within the ideation stage we are moving from test to learn, so that we are able to come up with the best possible outcome from this stage. And then finally we are converging. So we can see how the graph is moving. So we are converging to a final output, but before we implement it, so there is a it is being measured, that what is the output and are there any more gaps that need to be incorporated, so that learning is applied and then again it is moving in the measured stage and finally it is delivered. And even after delivering the final output, of course the implementation stage may again go through some more changes if required, if the final product still is unable to deliver to the best of its abilities. So one example here from IDEO using the human centered design is that they were asked to create a device for the nurses in the hospitals. So the device was required to enter some data, the process that is going on. There are several steps involved in a surgery and what has happened, what tick tick tick. So basically documenting that what all stages or steps have been completed. So when the designers heard of this problem, so they could, in their mind they saw a device which would look something like a flat disc that they could hold in both the hands and write on it. So when they went to the hospital to actually see how the surgery happens in the real life scenario, so then they saw that when the patient is being carried on a stretcher or he is transferred to the operation theatre bed, that how he reaches out for the nurse's hand for support. So that told the designers that the nurse requires one hand to be free in order to comfort the patient. So it cannot be a two hand operation, it will have to be a one hand operation. And then they designed a device wherein the thumb could be used to operate it and the other hand of the nurse was available so that the patient could be comforted. So the next method is the six thinking hats, wherein as you can see there are 6 colored hats, each denoting a different type of a personality or a feeling. So the blue has, for example, process. So if a team member is wearing a blue hat, So then they will be thinking about the process, how to implement it. If somebody is wearing a red hat, they will be talking from the perspective of the feelings. If somebody is wearing a black hat, then they will be critical, so they will be very cautious. So each color of the hat, which symbolizes uh, the way different people observe the reality, and this is one method where the observer can put or take off a hat and add another hat. So this adds that dimension to the whole process. So first to explore the problem, then next to develop a set of solutions, and finally to select a solution through the critical analysis. So if sometimes the group may get stuck, so this tool is very helpful when no ideas are coming across, then wearing or changing the hat can help one come up with some interesting solution. So this brings to the end of today's lecture. So in today's lecture we covered the different design interaction design processes, and what we have seen is that all of them highlight the importance of a good team, and how the team members all contribute to identify, define, prototype, and finally deliver the solution to the user. So in the next class we will try to understand the user more in detail, and what are some usability goals that the user is looking for, what are some of the user experience goals that make the product much more interactive, and what are some other cases which we need to consider while we are designing. So thank you and see you in the next lecture.